On today's Newsmakers, prophecy, rejecting God, and a rock star speaks out. That and more coming up. Welcome to Newsmakers, a show where we go behind the headlines each and every week to bring you interviews with pastors, entertainers, politicians, and other notable news figures. On today's Newsmakers, we are diving into an interview with Joel Rosenberg. Joel Rosenberg joins us to talk all about President Trump's victory, as well as Israel. Are we looking at prophecy unfolding right before our eyes? That and more here with Joel Rosenberg. Let's welcome him to Newsmakers. Joel Rosenberg, we've got a lot to talk about. It's been a big week with the election, and I want to start there because, Donald Trump's re-election, his second term, this is coming at a time when Israel has been more than a year now embroiled in war in Gaza and chaos, with a lot of other key actors in the region threatening more than they have in recent memory against Israel's very existence. So how does Donald Trump's win, in your view, potentially change the dynamics of this war?
Well, to quote him, Billy, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And I mean, Israelis overwhelmingly wanted Trump. This is interesting, right? Because obviously, unless you're a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen like me, Israelis obviously can't vote in the elections. They know, all Israelis know, that the elections were going to have a huge personal impact on how this war is finished, whether it's actually won, and what our security and prosperity is going to be in the years ahead. So, the poll released by an Israeli television network just on the Sunday before the elections showed that 66% of Israelis wanted Donald Trump, and only 17% wanted Kamala Harris. That's astonishing because, this wasn't a 51-49, right? This is, and this is after the the Kamala Harris closing argument. Trump's a Nazi, Trump's a fascist, Trump is Hitler, like all his people are garbage.
That's a good point. That's actually a really good point, that closing argument. Wow. I hadn't thought about that.
Israeli Jews and Israelis generally rejected that, but it was clear in Israelis' minds that they would get a better deal, that they'd be safer and more prosperous if Trump was in power. So there's a lot of not only rejoicing, but relief here as well.
When you look at what is happening, and this is a tough question, but you get these questions all the time, and you look at October 7th and the events that have followed and what is happening in the region there now, prophetically, what goes through your mind? Are we watching things that feel prophetic to you? Are we not? Just reflect on that a little bit.
In terms of prophecy, it's interesting, Billy. So at All Israel News, which is the news site that I run here, allisrael.com, as well as on my TBN show, The Rosenberg Report, I've been dealing with this from time to time, right? Because that is the number one question I'm getting asked. How do you put the current moment in, or can you put this in a prophetic context? And if so, how, right? So here's the short answer. I would say, number one, we're definitely in a birth pang. Right? Jesus speaks in Matthew 24 that there's going to be contractions and releases, moments of wars and rumors of wars and kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation, as well as earthquakes and famines and other disasters. Those are contractions. And just like when your wife gets close to delivering the one you want, right? The person that you've been waiting for you want that person to arrive. As you get closer, the contractions are longer and more painful, and the release moments are shorter, right? And you're catching your breath, and then you're going right back into the next contraction. Israelis on October 6th of 2023, we were living in a release. And then we entered on October 7th, the greatest contraction and the longest contraction that we've been through so far. I think the seven-front war that Israel is facing now from enemies from seven fronts, this is a contraction. So I think that's the most important way to think of it biblically. There's one other, and I would say Amos chapter 9, verse 9. The Hebrew prophet Amos received a word from the Lord, and that was that the Lord said, I will shake the whole house of Israel among the nations. I don't believe Israel's under judgment. I believe God, in other words, God didn't send this enemy, but God sovereignly allowed it. Why? To shake us, to help us realize that most Israelis either haven't read, don't remember, or don't care about Psalm 23, in which David, our greatest king, told us the Lord is our shepherd, right? And so most Israelis don't think of God as the shepherd, if they even believe in God at all. The problem with that is you don't need the shepherd just to feed you. You need him to protect you. And if you think there isn't a shepherd, if you think you don't need a shepherd, if you think the shepherd is impotent or he's mean or he doesn't care, your problem is you don't seem to understand the rest of Scripture, which is warning you that there are ravenous wolves trying to devour and destroy you. And that's what happened. Israelis forgot temporarily in their feeling of security. We forgot as a nation that there are ravenous wolves trying to destroy us. It seems astonishing to think, how could you forget that? You're Jewish, right? Yes, but it shows what a moment of release, of security we felt like we were in. But I think this is a wake-up call. I will say one last thing, and that is, I believe that the Palestinians of Gaza are going through a judgment, a biblical judgment. The Abrahamic covenant, Genesis 12, 1 through 3, is clear. God says, I will bless those who bless you, and I'll curse those who curse you. Now, if you curse Israel every day for 76 years, and you elect a genocidal government, even if later you don't want that, but what are you going to do now? And so this is, I believe we're seeing a judgment. Doesn't mean God doesn't want to show mercy. Also, we need to pray as Christians. Who else is praying for the Palestinians? We need to be. We need to show compassion. But there's a judgment going on from 76 years of hatred, hostility, cursing, and now, an attempt at genocide against Israel and the Jewish people.
That's incredible. Well, I appreciate you sharing as always, and looking forward to having you back again very soon.
Great to be with you. God bless you, Billy.
You can head on over to allisrael.com for Joel Rosenberg's reporting on Israel and the Middle East. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. Next up, rock star John Cooper joins us to talk about why he has broken his silence on politics and culture and to explore some of Skillet's powerful new music. Let's welcome John Cooper to Newsmakers. John Cooper, what is it like, let's just go right out of the gate here, to be one of the best-selling rock bands of the 21st century? What does that feel like for Skillet?
Well, Billy, I'll tell you, it's good to see you again, man. I would say, I don't know what you're talking about, but I guess if I look at the numbers, we have sold a lot of records, but I still don't feel like one of the biggest selling rock bands. I'm just shocked. I think I probably said this to you before. Can't believe we're still playing music. I'm shocked. I'm blessed. I love playing music. The fans have just been with us, and I think that's why we're still around, because it's word of mouth. It's fans that are just deeply loyal, and they get really excited when new music comes out and they tell their friends. That's always the way Skillet's had her career, and it's still that way. And I'm very excited. And I think that we need music. The 2020s has been so volatile. There's only a few things that everybody can share together. It's like sports and music is like some of the only things that people like cross political aisles for, or religious circles or whatever. We need that. We desperately need it in America, and music helps people. And so I love it. So thankful to be playing music still.
No, I love that. And, music and meaning, right, are two things. Like, over the years, in like the 90s, the 2000s, I started getting frustrated, even as a younger person, listening to music, because a lot of it lacked meaning. There was no message. It was really sex. It was really, all these things that didn't matter. And there's still a lot of that, obviously, in music today. But there is also a lot more meaning in music for people. And I think one of the journeys that you have been on over the past few years, you've always had meaning in your music. How has being more vocal about politics, the things happening in the world around us, changed or influenced, or maybe even come alongside in a different way, your music?
Yeah, it's really weird. I never thought that I would be somebody that would, be speaking about culture issues. I've always talked about my faith, and at the concerts and an interview, and people ask, or if I meet people, I always talk about my faith in God. But I think that what happened was that the world got so crazy that I truly thought, if we don't speak up now, I don't know how long we're going to have to speak. And that might sound to some people, probably not your audience, but to some people that sounds extremely like extremist, alarmist. We're going to lose our republic, but it was really feeling that way. 2020 was a scary time. And I was looking at the level of what I saw to be tyranny, propaganda, and cancel culture, shutting free speech down. And I started looking at it, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I just kept thinking, man, this reminds me of other things I've read in history, when you begin to have state-run propaganda just creating new reality. It's not true, but it's like a new false reality. And now you're not allowed to speak. And I just thought, I think I just have to do that, because I have been singing about this for a long time. I've been singing about standing up for what you believe in, the right to speak your mind. I'm about as close to a free speech absolutist as you can possibly get. I love free speech. I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful for the gospel, because we can speak the truth of Christ without recrimination from the government. What an incredible blessing to live in America. This is unbelievable. I mean, 1,000 years, people wouldn't have believed these kind of things were possible, right? 1,000 years ago. So I've been singing about these things, stand up for what you believe in. And now it's like time to put your money where your mouth is. You going to do it? Or are you just going to sing songs about it and say, I'm ready to die for the gospel, but I don't want to get made fun of? I said this to my recent, I'm like, you're ready to die for the gospel, but you won't lose a church member over it. You know what I mean? Like it's like, you don't want to say it from the pulpit because you might hurt some people's feelings, but you're ready to die for the gospel. What about losing a friend for the gospel? I mean, I don't want you to lose friends, but you might. That's why I started speaking out. To me, it was just something I had to do, but it really is an extension of Skillet's music. Has always been meant to empower people, to buttress Christians who say, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, but it's getting kind of hard at my school or at my job or at my whatever. And Skillet's music is meant to make you feel like, yes, I can stand up for Jesus today. So it made sense to stand up.
Yeah, no, and that's what I do love. And just to emphasize, as you were saying, you've always had the meaning in your music. A lot of other people haven't. But once you made that decision, and you and I have talked about this a number of times before, but I think it's important to come back to it, because you're still on this journey of speaking out more. And I know there's reaction that comes from that when you have an audience that's used to you talking about things through music, and now you're speaking about it through books and other venues. How has the audience responded to that? Talk about the good, the bad, the struggles, the positive. I'd love to sort of hear that part of the story.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is really interesting because when you're in a band, typically you don't talk about politics, things like that, because it's so polarizing, and you're going to lose half the people. And then you don't start you don't play in a band because you want people to hate you. Okay, you play in a band, but you're asking for their cheers. Clap for me, not spit at me. But anyway, it is really interesting. You get met with such hostility, but I will say we are in a very rewarding time, because we are seeing the lights come on in people's eyes. We're meeting people who are coming to Christ because of our music, or because of a podcast episode I was on or something I did, and they're going, I didn't realize that's what it meant to know Jesus. And you're beginning to see these massive changes. And I'm starting to believe, I'll end this question with this, in the world that I see on a day-to-day basis, what I am noticing is a bifurcation, not between Christians and everybody else. I'm seeing a bifurcation between people who all see the world in a certain way, and then people who see the world in a very different way. And what I'm finding out, strangely enough, is I'm seeing Christians on both sides of this, and it is so very strange. So I think the more that we can talk about these things, talk about biblical principles, talk about worldview, I think the better.
As always, it was great having you on. Appreciate your time today.
It's great to chat with you, Billy. Thank you, brother.
Head on over to skillet.com for more on Revolution and Skillet's other ongoing projects. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. For our final segment, we are sitting down with veteran researcher Dr. George Barna. He joins us to talk all about culture right now, but in particular, why he believes America's massive mental health problem is actually potentially rooted in a spiritual crisis. Let's welcome Dr. Barna to Newsmakers. Dr. Barna, your American Worldview Inventory 2024, lots of intriguing data in this, but one of the big things in the most recent release of data here is that you're looking at the hundreds of thousands of Americans who are spending a lot of money on drugs, mental health solutions, dealing with mental health elements. One of the arguments is that some of these people, and of course not all of them, but some of them might be actually treating the wrong problem. That's the way that you've worded this. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, Billy, we're in a situation where the best estimates that we have are that about 1 out of every 4 adults has some kind of diagnosable mental illness. There's a wide range. But when we look at it more deeply, we find that those numbers are higher the younger a person is. So as you dig into it to try to figure out things like anxiety, depression, fear, suicidal thoughts, OCD tendencies, addictions, when we look at all of those, what we find is that often what may be happening is that it's not that they have some kind of chemical imbalance or physical issue that's causing that what appears to be a mental illness. What's causing it may be their belief structure, their worldview. And if we were to address some of their core beliefs, some of those things, the anxieties, the stresses, the depression, might well go away without having to have prescribed pills or hospital stays or ongoing counseling sessions. Some people need those, no doubt about it. I'm not trying to say it's all silly. No, that's not the case. But I think often what happens is because counselors across the country, majority of them, don't really consider spirituality and faith as part of a person's mental health. What they do is they just go to what they know, which is, you know what, we can't figure it out, so let's prescribe pills, or let's just keep talking about it, or let's send you to a hospital, you know, whatever it may be. And a lot of times that's really not the best solution.
You know, it's interesting because when you look at American culture, and you know this better than anyone, you know, the removal of faith values, faith practices, people will have the debate all day long about authentic Christianity versus cultural. But the reality is, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but that the more we pull away from faith, the more, especially the younger generations, are struggling to make sense of the world around them. I'd love for you to just reflect on that a little bit, but it seems like there's at least a correlation there.
There it is. And it's actually a pretty strong one, surprisingly strong. And it's, if you correlate these two things, let's correlate whether or not a person has some kind of mental illness, like specifically depression, anxiety, fear, suicidal thoughts, on a regular basis, not just every once in a while, but if not every day, multiple times per week. And then let's relate that to the person's worldview. And then let's also bring in the person's age. Now, when you do that, what you find is that the lowest proportion wrestling with mental illness, you've got the highest proportion with a biblical worldview. It's double the proportion of biblical worldview you find with Gen X. It's 4 times the biblical worldview that you would find with millennials, 8 times the proportion of biblical worldview you find with Gen Z. So you can see that there's a fairly strong correlation there between all of these kinds of issues. Can we say that biblical worldview prevents you from having mental illnesses? No. but we can say that it appears that it severely or significantly diminishes the probability that you're going to have those issues.
We have to go in just a minute here, but I have to ask you, and I always love talking to you because I could talk to you for hours about this. I find it fascinating. But what is your advice in light of this latest research for Christians and for the church? How should they take this research and move forward in a productive way to help do what you were just describing?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the great things we can do is that Christianity, in large part, is about relationships. And here's an opportunity for us to, when we find somebody who's wrestling with these kind of mental health issues, stress, anxiety, depression, OCD, addictions, whatever it may be, fear. One of the things that came out of the research was a lot of these people wrestle with what's going to happen to me after I die. These are great things for us as followers of Christ and people with a biblical worldview to come alongside the people with these kind of issues and just start asking them questions about what they believe and be able to relate it back to their mental health challenges. And so whether they believe in God, whether they believe that they're going to live forever in heaven with Jesus because they've confessed their sins and invited him to be their Savior, whether or not they believe there is a biblical purpose to their life, whether or not they believe truth exists. These are the kinds of things that get us on that pathway to solving what we think are mental health issues, which are actually spiritual issues.
Absolutely. And, at a time when culture is sort of devolving in these strange ways, it's the definition of insanity to keep doing the same thing that we know isn't working. And so appreciate you and this research. And as always, joining us today. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Billy.
You can read about Dr. Barna's research at CBN News and FaithWire. We'll be right back in just a moment with more Newsmakers. That's all for Newsmakers. Thank you for watching, and be sure to head on over to the CBN News YouTube channel for the full interviews you saw on today's show. You can also head on over to the Newsmakers Daily Podcast. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts. As for this show, we will see you again next week.